Hello, thanks for looking in on my video. This is the next in my series of talks about ideas for ex-offenders who might be considering going into self-employment or who are in self-employment. And like I have in the other videos, I highly recommend you look at my friend Luke's videos. He's a self-employed painter decorator, and he gives lots and lots of tips that I agree with, really, that will help you. So do look at the comments section below, and you'll see that I put some of his videos, you know, in the description bit of this video. I put some of his videos and some of mine as well. So I don't think many people realise, but many offenders have a very, very low, or ex-offenders have quite a low self-esteem of themselves and very negative outlook. And that, I mean, they've had a whole history of being told off all the time and of being put down. And what I used to try and do was separate out the person from their offending behaviour. So I would criticise the offending behaviour, but I'd look at the person in a positive way and look for positives within that. Okay, so following on from that, there's several things that I used to enjoy. I used to really enjoy working with ex-offenders and helping them go in a positive direction. Now, I just want to talk about some of the stuff that I used to do. But one of them was, instead of me telling them all the time of what I felt they could do and what I thought should be important, I said, okay, I want you to fill in these 9 squares and put what is really important to you. Now, one of them might put his mum, all right? So I say, right, let's focus on 1 square at a time. We're just going to focus on your mum now. Now, I want you to think about how could you improve your relationship with your mum. You know, we're not living on this earth forever. Time is limited. What sort of things now do you think you could do to improve or enhance, even if you've got a good relationship with your mum? How do you want to go forward with your mum? Do you want to thank her for her support over the years? Or do you want to renew contact with your mum? Or do you, what sort of things can you do to improve your relationship with your mum? And it might be that you just want to give something positive to your mum and say to her, thank you, you know, and I think that goes a long, long way. And also to get you to think of you and your mum's relationship from your mum's point of view. How do you think your mum feels? And it's very, very good for ex-offenders to have an understanding of somebody else's point of view, particularly their victims, okay, their offences, but to have an understanding about how their mum feels and will help their relationship. The other thing I used to love doing was I used to do a number of tests that would help my service users understand what strengths they have and help them identify that they do actually have some qualities. They're not all bad. Most of them are not all bad, and many of them do actually have qualities and skills. And, you know, these tend to be forgotten about. So I used to give them a number of tests, and they were quite fun. We used to make it fun and enjoyable to complete them, and it helped them, you know, they were proper professional tests that helped them identify their skills and strengths. And also I used to like doing what's known as an aptitude test. This again was another professional test that I used to use, and it kind of gave indicators of what sort of work you could do, what sort of works you might like to do, and what sort of things would be a good idea for you to consider, what sort of employment that you could do, instead of offending. All right? And I used to have fun as well. I came up with these sentences, and I'm going to read them out now. and they stop halfway through, and you have to complete them for yourself. All right. So the first one is, and it goes ... So the first one is, a problem I managed to overcome is ... So you complete that. A problem that I managed to overcome is... All right. The next one is, something I'm dealing better this year than last is... The next one is, an example of my kindness towards others is... A compliment that was paid to me recently was... A compliment that was paid to me recently was... Okay. One of my best achievements since being on probation or under supervision is... A quality people say that I have is... People say I'm good at... I'm not going to reoffend because... Okay, so these are kind of eliciting, if you like, positives out of people, and I think they're quite nice. And isn't it nice to try and focus on positives instead of going... Yeah. So now you're self-employed, you're an ex-offender who's self-employed, and you've got to be squeaky clean. You can't go back to offending now, and you've got to bear in mind that 24 hours a day, you are now self-employed, and you've got to keep positive in that, and you've got to bear in mind that business opportunities will present themselves to you throughout the day, so be open to them. When you go to the petrol station, you might, I had a sign-written van. I've done entertainment work with the elderly and people with disabilities and that. And my van had those magnetic things. And lo and behold, another carer, somebody from a care home was filling up their car and came over and chatted to me and got my details. And, I've given my details and that. So business opportunities will present themselves throughout the day. And, be open to them. And if you're in a positive frame of mind, they will keep presenting themselves. But word of caution, pick and choose who you work for, right? Don't work for anybody dodgy. And don't overcommit yourself. Don't overbook yourself. Always allow time for family time and time for you to rest. Don't put all hours a day and end up overbooking, because you'll end up knackering yourself. You'll be making mistakes. I've done it. I was getting to a point where I was running around. I've got a lamp, I've got a screen and all things like that. And I was forgetting my equipment behind. I was rushing from one job to the other, and I was forgetting things. And I forgot my laptop at one place, and it's sort of, or you end up late, arriving late. It's important not to overcommit yourself. Allow yourself plenty of time to go from one job to another, and allow time for traffic and things like that. The other tip is that at some point, somebody's going to cross you, and don't take the law into your own hands. Don't ever do that, and being crossed actually is really upsetting. Back in the 1970s, I was a junior manager, and I remember people were nicking out the tools. I was a bar manager in this place, and I was running it. And what they were doing, they were under-ringing. So we used to do till checks, and we check against how much should have been taken and how much was actually in the till, and there'd be more money. So what they were doing, they were under-ringing and then taking out the surplus for themselves, And later in life, I had a little cafe that I owned and ran. And I had this lovely old lady working for me. And she was like my little company's granny, if you like. And we all loved her and that. But lo and behold, somebody saw that she was stealing out of my till. Was I upset? You know, but I couldn't allow that upset to eat away inside of me and take over my whole life. Somehow you've got to move on, and you can't take the law in your own hands. You just sort of, you know, sometimes you just have to dismiss the person and move on, and be grateful actually that you know, I remember I was working all hours and barely making a living and probably paying the staff more than me, and somebody was nicking out of me, and I was going, you know, but that's life, isn't it? It's there are wrong uns everywhere. So be wary of them. And I think Luke has got really good advice about watching out for yourself, protecting yourself, watching out for things that can go wrong. And my advice is never ever take the law into your own hands. You know, for an ex-offender to go and report something to the police takes something, doesn't it? The other little bit of advice which I found is, if you're not going to, I mean, what really helps ex-offenders is to get qualifications of some description, or go to college, or some achievement. And it might, I know in my experience, it actually helped with the police sometimes, because they would go, oh, so-and-so, he stopped offending, he's attended a college course. And getting some sort of qualification really helps combat discrimination. And bear in mind, some of the probation service will, providing there's enough blue water and a gap between the offences and stopping offending, they will consider giving work to ex-offenders, because sometimes they're really good. You know, for example, a number of drug and alcohol counsellors are ex-offenders, and often they're really, really good. And people who've been in trouble often are really helpful. And I think the probation service are opened up to working, you know, and getting people, for example, somebody who's just come out of jail, and you might get, you know, somebody who been there themselves and they stopped offending, and that can be really helpful. So the big worry I have really for people coming out is that nowadays it's so hard. There's no accommodation, there's not much support, and in fact, to be truthful, probation haven't got much resources at their fingertips that they can, you know. It's not as if they're accommodation agency and can supply housing to the homeless, but often this is what basic needs offenders need, is somewhere to live, you know, a roof over their heads and a job, just as a starting point, you know, and often that ain't there. So isn't that frustrating? But those guys that go out self-employed, it's a bloody good route. And like I was saying in my other videos, it can be really enjoyable and rewarding. And just keep positive. And I'd like to wish you all the very best and have a happy day. And don't forget to look out at Luke's videos. They're excellent. All right? And have a good day now. Bye-bye.